controlling behaviors, how to handle controlling behaviors, and maybe how to tell if you've become a little bit controlling yourself. We're going to talk about the cons to that, the downsides, and the fact of the matter is that there's a certain level of control that's realistic, and then beyond that, anything you think of as control is actually just an illusion, right? And that's something I want to bring up, and we're going to approach this from the perspective of parenting, but this could be talked about, used when you're talking about work, your bosses, your supervisors, and things along those lines. So I want to talk about controlling behaviors first. So controlling behaviors are essentially any type of behavior where you're trying to exert control over something else or somebody else's decisions, or exert control over a situation and everybody involved in the situation to get them to do a certain thing, right? So that's controlling behaviors. Now, when I talk about leadership, I like to talk about don't be controlling. Being controlling builds resentments. Instead, be motivating, be inspirational, be influential, be a great guide. But understand this one simple concept. When it comes to control, the only thing in your life you have true and realistic control over is yourself. Your thoughts, your actions, and your decisions. The thoughts, actions, and decisions of other people are not yours to control. You could guide, you could influence, you can offer advice, but you can't actually control those things. And if you think that you can, what you're actually doing is utilizing something like fear as a way to keep somebody from acting in a way you don't want them to act. But all that does is build resentment and gets them to act in that way anyway when you are not around, okay? Controlling behaviors don't do what you think they do. So let's talk about parenting for a second. If I'm a parent, I know a lot of parents like to feel like they have a lot of control over their kids, their actions, their decisions, and what their kids say. This can be based in a few different things. Typically, controlling behaviors are based in one of three things. They're either based in fear of being judged, such as a parent, fear of being judged based off something your kid said or did, or it's based on a sense of power and ego, a sense of wanting to control something that's happening, right? So it's either fear or ego. I mean, and it's not always necessarily the fear of being judged. It could also be the fear of your child falling behind, or the fear of, what was I getting at with that? The fear of losing the version of your kid that you have in your head. This is a common thing I think parents deal with, especially around the age of 4, around the age of 7, around the age of 11 to 12, and around the age of 14, 15. This is where this comes in, because our kids change so much from a 2-year to 3-year periods. They change so much across these periods. We have to, as parents, we have to learn to let go of our ideas of who our kids are every couple few years, because I could be nursing some deep-seated fear of losing my sweet little 4-year-old boy that's 9 now and has a completely different set of interests, a completely different set of understanding and knowledge about the world. But see, too many people are afraid to have hard conversations with their 8 and 9-year-old, such as the birds and the bees talk and things like that. We all know that 7, 8, 9, usually a bit closer to 8, 9, is legitimately a good time, a preferred time to have that conversation. Because if they're in public school in particular, by the time they're 9 years old, this stuff is being thrown around as bullying and insults and all of that. And if you haven't expressed or talked to your kids about it and helped set them up or guide them for how to deal with it, then by the time they're 9, they're already a lot more informed about this kind of stuff than you think they are. So that fear of losing your baby can also be what's holding you back from helping your kid and guiding your kid through the milestones that they are dealing with, right? So yeah.
And it can also express in, my kid has to do XYZ sport, has to do football, has to do baseball, has
that whole
to be the best.
Living vicariously through your kid thing.
Because
or if they're going to do it, they're going to be the best because other parents will judge me, and I'm a great athlete. So if my kid's not a great athlete, the parents are going to judge me and say that I'm a bad parent. God, you got to let that go.
And quite honestly, do you know what the percentage of professional athletes is of all the athletes in the world? It's an extremely small percentage. I'm sorry. Not every kid is going to be a Major League Baseball star.
Yeah, and
They're not going into the
I am
NFL.
sick of parents bringing their 4-year-old kid in and then going, I want them to be the best kickboxer. I want them to be the best grappler. I want them to go to tournaments at 5 years old and kick everybody's butt. I want my kid to be the best fighter at 6. There is no best fighter at 6 years old. That's ridiculous. We don't even have them fighting at that point. They haven't learned the fundamentals yet. They still need to learn balance. They need to learn footwork. They need to learn how to move. They need to learn coordination. They need to learn timing. They need to learn rhythm. They have to learn proprioception and kinesthetic awareness before they can learn how to be a kickboxer.
And quite honestly, at 4, 5, and 6, we're still teaching them not to hit people when they grab a toy.
Right.
So now you want your kid to fight at a professional level?
At 7
No.
years old? Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Those are two different, completely different messages
Yeah.
that you're now trying to control. And guess what? They can't figure that out.
No.
They can't separate those things.
Yeah, no. And even teenagers, sometimes I have parents bring in a preteen or a teenager and the kid has fun in class. The kid's maybe not very athletic in their own right. Maybe they're a little uncoordinated, but we get them having fun and they're making some improvements. And they're able to do a few things and it's great. And then we go talk to parent after class and it's, well, I'm thinking that he could be a champion at this in under a year. No, it takes 6 years just to get to the black belt level. You can't even be a champion until you're at the black belt level. And that takes a good 6 years to even get to. So no, your kid's not going to be a champion in a year. I don't get it. So many people bring in their 11, 12, 13-year-old kids and within 6 months think that they can outfight one of our 13-year-old instructors, Mr. Rose. Think they can outfight him in 6 months. And then they get sorely disappointed, because they challenge him to a match and he runs circles around them. And you know who the parent always blames? Us. They blame us. Well, I've been bringing my kid here for 6 months. They should be able to beat that guy. Yeah, that kid's been training here for 9 years. You really think your 6 months worth of training should beat the kid who's been doing it for 9 years? That's not going to happen.
And I've been training for 12, 13 years. I am still in a decent prime of my life. But you know what? And I have a 4th degree. I'm going for my 5th degree. But that doesn't mean that I can go out on the sport karate circuit and be the best. Because guess what? I'm not training for 7 or 8 hours a day.
And people misunderstand karate too because of some old movies and crap from the 80s and 90s. Karate Kid, terrible movie. Bad taste in my mouth about karate. That is not karate at all. So then you get all these people that are like, well, karate's just 80% kicks. Karate's no good for self-defense. Karate won't teach you how to fight. Bull crap. Bull crap. George St. Pierre, karate guy. Right? He was an MMA champion for multiple years, right? And he's not the only one. Michael Venom Page, right, is another one. There's dozens and dozens of karate guys that compete at the high levels of MMA. There are. You've got the wrong idea about karate based on a movie, right? Karate is so much more than kicks. Karate includes kicks, clinch work, joint locks, takedowns, grappling. It includes a lot. And we don't just teach karate. We teach a very mixed curriculum. But karate itself includes a lot. Most karate was just low kicks. Everybody thinks karate's high kicks. That's taekwondo. You're getting that confused. Karate's low kicks. Anyway, we got off track there. But this point is about control. But we run into this with parents all the time. So they come in and they want their kid to be a champion in 6 months. Ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. No matter how hard they work, they could come in here and work 8 hours a day. Still ain't going to happen because you don't get to be a champion until you're at the black belt levels, and it takes years to get to that level, right? Years and years. And then, they get that, I want my kid to be able to fight after one class. It's not going to happen. I want my kid to be able to fight at 6 years old. It's not going to happen. Now, give us a year or two, and yeah, your kid will be able to fight. Yes, that will happen down the road, right, as it goes. But you have to train for that crap first, right? Some of y'all want that instant gratification, and you think that if you just, I'm going to make my kid work on it at home, and I'm going to drill it into him, and I'm going to make him do 100 push-ups a day, and I'm going to do 100 sit-ups. No, you know what you're doing? You're making them hate it. You're making them take something that was going to be good for them, that's going to help them grow, and you tried to control them so that they become the best at it, and all you did was build resentment and make them hate the sport. Because now you've made it not fun anymore. Guys, kids will get better at the things they think are fun. They will avoid the things they think are not. And if you take the fun out of it,
And they're going to avoid the things that they think they're going to disappoint you in.
So the more disappointed you are that they didn't do 200 push-ups today, that they didn't practice their kicks 1,000 times today, the more disappointed you are, the less likely they are to practice, because they know they don't want to disappoint you. So then they're just going to want to quit so that they don't have to disappoint you anymore, right? Yeah. The parent's job is to be supportive. Now let's get back to control. Once again, controlling behaviors generally stem from two things: fear or ego, right? For parents, it's usually either a fear of losing their image of their little kid in their mind, or it's a fear of being judged by other parents based on what your kids do. Well, you're not going to face that judgment here, at least not by us, because we understand that your kids are separate people. So remember what I said a minute ago. Hey, thanks you guys on YouTube. Appreciate the comments.
A bunch of those came out at once.
Remember what I said earlier. The only thing you actually have any real control over in your life is your actions, your decisions, your ideas. And honestly, if you think you have full control of those, you're lying to yourself, because people make millions and billions of dollars a year, and their entire job is to get you to think a certain way. Their entire job is to convince you of something, right? And if you let those outlets convince you of those things, you're not really in control of your own thoughts, right? If you don't control what you're focused on, somebody else will control it for you. Okay? That's really, really clear. So the first thing we need to understand about dealing with controlling behaviors is you have to understand that you can only control what you can do. You can't actually control what someone else can do. And if you think you can, you're fooling yourself. You're absolutely fooling yourself. Now, if you punish them enough, they may avoid that action in front of you, but the second you're gone, they're going to do that thing. Right? Kids do a lot better. We've done podcast episodes on this before. Kids do a lot better if you can convince them to make the right decision for themselves than they do if you force the decision on them, and then they're going to rebel, right? So let's get, and this could be about your boss too, right? We could talk about maybe your boss has controlling behaviors towards you, and they want to control everything that you do. If you have a boss like that, or ever had a boss like that, how do you feel about them? Probably don't like them, right? Probably a lot of resentment there. You probably every day you probably come home going, I could do this job so much better if I didn't have this person micromanaging me all the stinking time. Well, your kids feel the same way when you overly exert control on them, right? But you have to understand that it either comes from a place of fear or it comes from a place of ego, of wanting a power trip, right? So, sorry, let me read my notes to make sure I get back on track. Now, when that illusion of control is based on ego, that's when you run into abusive relationships, right? If that sense of control is based on me wanting to have some power trip by exerting control over you, this is how abusive relationships begin. I want to control this person, so I'm going to control everything they say or do. And if they don't say, or if they say or do something that I don't like or I don't agree with, I'm going to punish them profusely for it. And when the verbal punishment doesn't work, the physical punishment comes in. When the physical punishment is not enough, it escalates to more physical punishment. Now, do you see where that goes? Because then that kid becomes an adult and they hate you. They hate you with a passion.
And guess what we taught them? That every time they disappoint us or make us mad, we hit them. So you know what their brain learned?
So then they become an adult, and every time someone disappoints them or something like that, they're going to hit them. Okay? And this is another, at least I'm going to go off on another short tangent here because I'm in the martial arts world. It leads me to something I've heard too many times. I've heard people give you like, well, if somebody says some nasty stuff to my kid, I'm just going to teach them to punch him in the face. If people got punched in the face every time they were insulting, there'd be a lot fewer insults in the world. And you're half right. If everybody got punched in the face every time they insulted somebody, there would be far fewer insults in the world. But you know the part you got wrong? No one would know how to navigate the world anymore. If every time I had to talk to somebody for my job and they insulted me for doing my job, and I stop and punch them in the face, they're not going to be insulting anymore. But I'm going to end up in the back of a stranger's car with my hands tied behind my back and a long, expensive court battle in front of me. You see the problem with that? We can't be teaching our kids to handle every conflict with fists and kicks. Sometimes, now, if it's a physical conflict, someone tries to hurt me physically, then that deserves a physical response. But just because someone's making fun of my stinky feet or my Walmart brand shoes, that is not a reason to punch somebody in the face. But it is a reason to laugh at said person, because if that's the best they got is making fun of you for something like that, then they live a sad and pathetic life, and it is okay to laugh at them. right? That's good. But yeah, no, I just wanted to go off on that side tangent there about that. So over controlling your kids will lead to nothing but resentment and crashing. You see this all the time. Look, when we were younger, there was a phrase, if you're anywhere near our age, this might make sense to you. Anytime someone heard the preacher's daughter, it would convey a particular priestly-like image in your head. In our generation, that was common. You know why? Because there was this whole thing for decades that, and it's not just in the church, it's other places too, where a parent tries to control the kid to an absurd level and then expect that kid, once they turn 17 or 18, to be able to be fully independent. But they never allowed the kid any level of independence until they were 17, 18. And then they give them too much independence at once. And what happens? Kid goes wild. Kid goes wild, starts partying like crazy, drinking like crazy, gets into drugs. And when we were younger, this was known as sort of, whenever someone would say the preacher's daughter, this is what they were referring to. The concept of someone absolutely losing their minds when they finally got a little bit of freedom because they'd been controlled their entire life. So how do we prevent that as parents? Well, it's very simple. Every time our kids reach new milestones, we need to let go of our image of what they were and recognize them for what they are, so that we can slowly give them a little bit more independence every couple years as they grow, so that they're stepping up into that adult level of independence by the time they're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right?
And this way, they're going to trust us. If I exert so much control that my child is fearful of coming to me with anything.
Yeah, and if you try to control your kids, trust me, they're too scared to talk to you about the things they're really dealing with, because they know that you're going to get mad at them if they say certain things, because you've gotten onto them for saying certain things that were inappropriate. So now they have a kid at school saying way more inappropriate things to them. And they need help dealing with it because they don't even understand what the kid means by those things. But they're too afraid to go tell you that this kid is saying those things to them, because they know if they say those things in front of you, they think they're going to get in trouble for it. Do you see the problem? Now they're not willing to come to you and talk to you about things like sex or bullying or dating or some really nasty stuff that gets thrown around, or racial slurs or whatever else. They don't want to come tell you they're dealing with those problems because you get onto them every time they say anything like that, right? So now they don't feel comfortable talking to you about things like that. Now, there is a certain point where things are inappropriate, where you can be like, and I've done this with my son, now is an inappropriate time to say that. In front of these people is an inappropriate time to bring that up. But when it's just me and you, if you have questions, we can talk about it then. And I'll talk to you about it openly, honestly, and I will. I will talk about it openly and honestly. Now, sometimes he's opened up those conversations and he wasn't ready. And I was open and honest with him, and his eyes go wide, and he's like, that's more than I really wanted to know. Well, son, it's still important that you know. It's important that you know. It may be more than you wanted to know, but at least you know I'm going to be honest with you. At least you know I'm going to set you straight. At least you know you can trust me for that. And that's the way I like to approach each of our students as well. I like to approach my students in a way of, look, if you come talk to me one-on-one about something you're dealing with, you can tell me anything. You can tell me exactly what they said, even if it involved curse words. You can tell me exactly what they said, even if it was wildly inappropriate. Because how am I supposed to help guide you through what someone else is saying to you if you're not even willing to tell me what it is they're saying to you? And I'm not willing to listen, right? So I approach it with my students that way too. Like, look, you guys can come to me and talk to me about just about anything, and I will do my best to guide you in how to deal with that situation that you're dealing with. And I feel like if more parents did that too, we would be in a lot better position with our kids. Yeah. A lot better position, right?
Because they are tiny humans. They're tiny humans with less experience. So,
but they have their own mind. They have their own thoughts. And here's the thing. When our son was 5 or 6, there was this weird thing amongst the parents in this studio. It was bad. You remember this. No. Weird thing amongst the parents in this studio when he was about 5 or 6, where there was this saying that would go around where they would say, well, so-and-so said this, they must have got it from somebody. You do know that kids by the age of 5 and 6 can take 3 or 4 or even 5 thoughts and put them together into one imaginative, creative thing without having had to have heard it before from somebody else, right? Right? I got sick of that. So many parents, well, they said something inappropriate and they must have heard it from somewhere. It must have been their parents. No, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe they heard it from an older brother. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just took something they saw on the TV, mixed it with something they saw on another TV show, mixed it with something they saw someone else say, and it came out as something that we know is wildly inappropriate, but they didn't know it was wildly inappropriate because to them, they're just taking this idea and this idea and this idea and putting it together, right?
And please remember that some things that kids say are age appropriate.
Even if they seem inappropriate. I am at least finally glad that parents as a whole have accepted using anatomically correct language with young children.
Goodness.
Thank you. Because my goodness, it's so important to their safety when it comes to strangers. It's so important to this, not just strangers. You guys know that, look, I was I'm going to try to say this in the nicest way I can. I was a child victim of adult actions, behaviors with 3 different trusted adults across 2 years. 3 different trusted adults. And every time I tried to talk to my mom about, hey, you want me to go stay at this guy's house while you go to work, but every time I go there, he wants to take clothes off and get a massage. Every time I go there, he wants to take clothes off and get in the hot tub. I don't feel comfortable over there. Oh, you can't be saying that about him. He's such a nice guy. Don't be trying to spread rumors. I don't know where you got that. I got that from them, right? But I wasn't comfortable using anatomically correct language. So when I would say these things, I would say stuff like, well, he kind of keeps wanting to put his hands on me and like rub on me. Well, where's he rub? Well, it starts off rubbing my shoulders. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Quit being a baby. No, there is something wrong with that because that's exactly how they start. They start by building a trust relationship with the parent of the child. They get the parent of the child to trust them. Then they get the kid to trust them. And then they use that trust to start building more and more physical touch and normalizing it. That's exactly how it went with me between the ages of 10 and 13 before I finally learned to fight back.
And please understand that you're more likely to be attacked or a crime perpetrated on you by someone you know
than you are by a stranger.
Than by a stranger.
The odds of getting like even punched in the face by a stranger are like less than 0.004%, right? It's really, really low. I have no idea what that comment means. It sounds like a joke. Anyway, back to the controlling thing. Now, if you over-control your kids for too much, parents get into this topic of, well, I want to hold on to the idea of my sweet little 5-year-old. Well, your 5-year-old's 9 now.
Keep it in your memory and move on.
Keep it in your memory and move on because your 9-year-old is not your 5-year-old. So I see too many parents that parent the same way from the ages of 4 to 10, and then they switch gears for 11 to 13. It's already too late by that point. You should have switched gears around 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, more
right?
Like 6.
6,
and then again.
4, 6, 7, 8, right? About every 2 years, right? Because if you just constantly push down things and tell them that's inappropriate, you're not old enough to talk about that, we'll get into that when you're older, things like that, they're going to turn elsewhere for that knowledge. And they're going to stop talking to you about it because they feel like you're not going to talk to them about it. So they'll stop coming to you with those important things. And the more you try to control their behaviors to make sure they're being appropriate, the more you are losing control of your ability to guide and influence them in a positive way. And usually I see it all the time that by the time the kid is 12, 13, if you do it this way, by the time that kid is 12 or 13, you've already lost them. You've already lost them. If you have a 13, 14-year-old that never comes out of their room, doesn't talk to you about anything, and only answers in grunts, you lost them.
That's your fault.
You lost them, right? You lost that level of trust that made them feel confident to come to you with anything and everything that they don't understand, anything and everything that they're struggling with. And then you answer them honestly. You answer them honestly, right? So that they can understand what's happening. And that's really, really important. Like I said, though, that sense of control often comes from a fear of being judged, a fear of losing your little baby, or a power trip. And if it's happening in a power trip, such as if you're married and you see this power trip level of control happening with your kid, you need to step in before it gets crazy. Okay? You got to step in before it gets crazy. I'm not saying it can't be worked out, but those things tend to escalate. They tend to escalate, and oftentimes it escalates to physical abuse or beyond before anyone steps in. And that's when it's gone too far, right? So you have to let go of that concept of keeping the peace sometimes to get in control of the power trip. Now, the other two, control coming from fear of being judged. Stop fearing being judged by what your kids do. Support your kids no matter what they do. Yeah, get on to them if they did something wrong. Teach them how to do it right. Absolutely. Guide them. Absolutely. Right? But stop being afraid of being judged by something your kid says or does. If someone walks up to you and judgmentally says something, oh, well, your kid said this. Yeah, well, so they did. They're their own person. I'll talk to them about it later. We'll have a discussion about what's appropriate and what's not, when it's appropriate, when it's not. But guess what? I didn't say it. I didn't do the inappropriate thing. Don't be judging me for that. And if you do judge me for that, I'm judging you for being judgmental. So let it go. Because it's the kid that did it. Not me. Not her. Didn't learn it from us. Picked it up on his own. All right, well, we'll guide him on that as we go. Must have heard somebody say it? Not necessarily. Right? Not necessarily. So then we'll find out where he got the idea, and we'll go from there. I remember our kid said something once a bunch of parents thought was really inappropriate, and when we talked to him and figured out like where it came from, he was actually referencing vampires because he had been learning about vampires because we were doing vampire stories. But what he said came out as wildly inappropriate. But at the same time, guess what? He was potty training. So he was potty training. And he learned a story about vampires. So you can imagine what two and two things went together that came across as very inappropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to let go of that. Kids put things together sometimes, and then, they're inappropriate. Okay, well, they're just a kid. Give them a pass. Guide them. Let them know why it's appropriate, why it's inappropriate, and move on. Don't control them over it or punish them over it. They made a mistake. Guide them as to why. They didn't even realize it was a mistake. Guide them to why it was a mistake. Don't make the same mistakes I did. See, I screwed this up when our son did it. I screwed it up and did everything wrong. That's why I can sit here and say this now, right? Because I know I screwed up, and I'm going to live with the guilt of that for the rest of my life.
Oh, I remember one time so this was actually a positive. I was with my aunt and a cousin, and we were going to like some swap meet or something, and there was this like broken down, dilapidated house on the property, and I was just walking holding my aunt's hand, and I remember saying, that looks like a horror house. As in HORROR.
Right. I
and
think we can see where that's going.
What? And I was like, it looks like a horror house, like a scary house. And she goes,
It
oh,
still sounds bad.
like a haunted house. And I was like, yeah, that's what I said. Like, okay. And she's just like, I remember her like looking over my head to my cousin, like, that sounded really bad. It was like, I'm glad no one else heard that. But to me, it
was perfectly appropriate thing to say.
A technically appropriate word for the situation.
Just because you heard something else didn't mean I said anything inappropriate.
Yeah.
And look, I had a guy try to start a fight with me in a bathroom over something like this once because I complimented somebody on their cowboy boots. And that compliment got misunderstood, and I had a guy follow me into the bathroom, really wanting to kick my butt. That was a fun story. I tell it all the time. But this isn't the time for that story.
No, but you can choose to control really hard,
or you can choose to guide.
Take a breath and ask some questions and guide.
You guys have any idea how many times when Axel was young, and that's his name, Axel, people came up to me and told me that he called them an a-hole? But what really happened is they go, hi, what's your name? He's a little kid trying to say Axel. You can imagine what that sounded like. And then they would think that he called them a-hole. And then they would come complain to us. I can't believe you teach your kid to say something like that. We didn't. He's struggling to pronounce the K. That's completely normal for a kid. Completely normal. He wasn't saying what you thought he said. He was telling you his name. Mm-hmm. He doesn't even know that word yet. He'd probably not heard it yet, right? So there's a certain aspect to that. Now let's talk about what happens if you do over control, okay? If you over control every action and decision and thing your kids do all the way up to age 10, age 12, age 14, age 16, then what happens is they start to resent you and come to you less and less. So by the time they're a teenager, they barely want to talk to you at all. And every time you come around them, they act annoyed or frustrated and sigh and roll their eyes and walk off. Now, they're going to do a little bit of that anyway, right? But if that's the constant and you never really get any time to hang out with your kid where they are acting like they actually like you, then that's probably because they resent you. They might even hate you if you've been doing it for too many years. That resentment builds. So they love you, but they resent you for how hard you've been on them about things that they ended up having to figure out themselves because you wouldn't help them because you said it was inappropriate to talk about or do. So they had to figure it out on their own. And then that builds resentment. The same kind of resentment. Look, I love my dad. He passed away over a year ago. I really do. But I carried resentment towards that man for most of my life. Why? Because he didn't do anything to stop it when I wound up homeless at 16. He didn't do anything to stop it. And I've always had resentment to my mom. Why? Because she was extremely controlling and extremely manipulative. Extremely. To the point that she would have me second guessing everything about my life, to the point that I was terrified to talk to people. I was terrified to express an opinion. I was terrified to say anything because she weaponized everything I said against me. So I know builds to. It builds to crashing out, and it builds to be homeless than live here. That was me. I'd rather be homeless than live in this situation, right? And guys, I don't know if you realize how many homeless there are out there who are only homeless because of this. Not because they don't work hard, not because they don't try hard, but because their parents controlled them to such a level and then gave them all this freedom at once, and they didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know how to handle the responsibility of having that much freedom, and they wind up homeless, right? Or they build up so much resentment that they'd rather be on their own living on the streets than dealing with you anymore because the streets are more helpful than you are to them, right? That's bad. That's bad. You don't want that. So controlling leads to resentment, it leads to hatred, it leads to crashing out, and it also leads to your child being unprepared for the real world. It does. So if I refuse to have those important conversations with my kid before they're 9 years old, and then they hit 8, 9 years old, and they start getting bullied with really nasty stuff. I don't think you guys realize what these 9-year-olds are out here saying. I remember what we said at 9 years old. It's still about the same. Go back to when you were 9. And think it through, and then look at your kid and be like, oh my gosh. Because what you're going to realize is you're so stuck in wanting to see them as that cute 5 and 6 year old that now that they're 9, you're not paying attention to what they're dealing with and the level that they're dealing with the bullying at. You're just not seeing it, right? So you have to let go of that image and help them every step of the way. And every one of those steps, every couple of years, you need to give them more responsibility, more freedom. Right? A little bit at a time so that they learn how to handle that freedom responsibly so they don't end up with the whole preacher's daughter situation where they've been super controlled all the way to the age of 16 and now they can drive and they've been given freedom to go hang out with their friends and now they're partying, they're on drugs and they're losing their absolute minds. They're pregnant and dropping out of school. Like I knew 3 preachers' daughters that got pregnant and dropped out of school before they were 18. And I went to a small school. Right? But that comes from being over-controlled as a kid and then given too much freedom at once, and then they don't know how to handle that freedom responsibly. What's crazy about it is these over-controlling parents also tend to be the same ones that are like, when my kid turns 18, they're out, they're on their own. Okay, great, but did you teach them how to be responsible and live out on their own? Or did you control them, and then expect to continue living that controlled life when they have the freedom? No, they're not going to continue to control themselves in the same way you controlled them. They're going to want to exercise that freedom. So if you don't give them space at 5 years old, at 8 years old, at 12 and 13, at 15, and at 17 to express that freedom, then you're not doing them any justice. They're not going to be ready for adult life by the time that you kick them out. Yep. They're just not going to be ready for it because you haven't allowed them practice at having freedom and making the right choice. Instead, you've just forced them to make the right choice because you said so.
The choice you wanted them to make.
The choice you want, not even necessarily the right choice, the choice you wanted them to make because you said so, and they never actually had the freedom to choose. And then once they can drive, they realize, oh, my parents aren't with me. I have the freedom to choose what I do and say, and they're going to experiment. Wouldn't you rather your kids experiment a little at a time at age 6, age 9, age 13, age 16? Wouldn't you rather them experiment a little at a time so that every time they have a problem or make a wrong choice, you can help them, you can guide them, not punish them, help them and guide them to make better choices. Let them see the consequences to their actions. Let them live the consequences to their actions, and then guide them how to do better in the future. If you do it that way, they're learning to practice a little bit more freedom and a little bit more control over their decision making way before you expect them to be a grown adult, right? Oh, thank you. Thank you, wandering or stranger. I appreciate that. But I guess it's about time, unless you had anything else to finish up, I guess it's about time to jump off here. So we've been talking about the cons of being too controlling. And yes, there is a point of being a parent and being the disciplinarian and saying, hey, that's not appropriate for this situation. But understand there's two sides. So if your 9-year-old comes out and says something wildly inappropriate, you could start by saying, hey, that's wildly inappropriate to say right there. And then you could say, did someone say that to you? Is there a reason you're saying it? Do you know what it means? And if they, no, I don't know what it means. Okay, well, let me explain to you what it means so that you know why and when it's inappropriate and why it's inappropriate to say that. Because you might not realize what you're saying actually means. That gives you a chance to guide instead of punish. Always look for the chance to guide before the chance to punish. Okay, always. And you will have far fewer times that you have to punish. A good 5-minute conversation
can save you a lifetime of frustration.
Right. A good 5-minute conversation can prevent a week's worth of punishment that you both are dealing with and a week's worth of resentment. Yep. Sometimes it just takes a 5-minute conversation about going, hey, you said this wildly inappropriate thing. Do you know what that means? No? All right, well, I need you to try to, or yes? Okay, explain to me what it means. I just want to make sure you know what it means. And then I can explain, okay, well, this is the situation that's inappropriate to say. It might be appropriate to say in this situation, but not this one. And now I can tell them, I can explain how the decision-making process works.
Yep. No, I was just...
Okay, so until we see you guys again, be the best teammate you can be, and be the best at being you. We got some